Our next speaker is Stephane Barbeau from CPCS, Canadian management firm, specializing in power transport and PPPs. We have offices around Africa, working specifically in sector reforms, tariffs, roadmap developments, unbundling issues, transaction advisor activities for renewable projects. Specifically in South Africa, CPCS have started working on some wheeling projects here in South Africa a few years back. Also involved with IPP offers, overseeing sovereign guarantees, development of new strategy for Eskom, and also a project for Salga, looking at new business models. Stephane, can you please share with us, and then the podium is yours. And share with us markets, interesting thing coming forward, new on the block. You're welcome to share with us. Thank you.
So good afternoon all. Pleased to join you virtually. I was in South Africa for a large workshop with Eskom a few weeks ago, but now I'm back in Canada, so it's a bit early, but now I'm awake. I will try to build on the previous presentations and link the theory, international experience, and see how this all fits within the South African context, which is rather unique. And I mean, South Africa is moving towards the directions of Australia or the UK, but there are peculiarities which will have to be considered, including the role of municipalities. So the first point is really every market is unique. So this is the agenda. I mean, we'll go through very quickly the various types of competitive electricity markets, but need to consider that each market has very unique features. So it's very difficult to have a typologies, but we'll try. And then we'll try to link the types of markets with an overview of where they are competitive electricity markets around the world. And they are all over the place now. I think maybe not a majority, but a quite large number of countries have moved over to competitive electricity markets. We'll present the current context, which honestly is a bit peculiar. So we'll explain why, and then we'll kind of briefly touch upon the proposed design. I mean, it hasn't been made fully public, but I mean, there are discussions around a model which is being proposed by the future ISMO, Independent System and Transmission Operator. But it has, of course, hasn't been approved by the MRE or being discussed with the market yet. And then finally, the impact on municipalities of all these potential changes. So we basically define three types of markets. One is what I call a mandatory pool or a centralized dispatch type of model, which was the original UK pool. And we'll get back to it in a second. And then there is variations of this one, and I'll explain what is the variations. And then there's the what we call the multi-market models, or what I rather call the self-scheduled decentralized trading arrangements, because this is the one which takes a bit of thinking, I mean, or understanding, because it's based around bilateral physical scheduling themselves. It looks very simple, but it's not simple, because basically it shifts all the risk and reward to generators or load to self-schedule their generation or their consumptions. And the system operator then is only taking charge in the real time by running a balancing market to kind of balance supply and demand. So while it looks simple, it is in fact quite complex. And I mean, there was a really good slide by Tony about the stage of market opening in the UK. I mean, one of the peculiarity of South Africa is every consumer is actually eligible according to the ERA, but that's not going to happen. I mean, it's impossible to open the market with 100% customers. It will have to be phases somehow, which means that, I mean, as in Europe and in most markets, what is likely to happen is you're going to have a hybrid model where part of it will be probably regulated, and part of it will be open to competition, maybe both at the wholesale and at the retail level. If you open fully the wholesale market, but partly the retail market, then the regulator will have to really get into and for example, approve the generation pass-through cost to regulated customers. We have 2 slides on this. We'll see if we have time. And that's going to have a big impact on the municipalities. So for example, if municipalities contract directly and they screwed up, I mean, they make bad decisions and they contract at higher price, are they allowed to pass all these generation costs to their customers or not? And what are the benchmark and the reference price? So this is something that will become more and more important as we're now discussing municipalities being able to contract directly. So back to the model. So the original model was basically centralized dispatch by having all generators making bids into a pool. The basic problem was that because there's few generators, by withholding capacity, they were able to increase the hourly price. So hourly price were very volatile and also maybe on the bit on the high side, but compared to what's going on now, I mean, maybe it was not that bad. But so basically, these volatile price then were edged by financial contracts. So basically So basically, what happens is that the distribution companies, I mean, didn't want to pay hourly prices, which you didn't have any control. So basically, they came to an agreement where if the price were too high, I mean, they agree on a what we call a strike price. So basically, the generator says, I'm gonna sell you at an average price of 100 Rand per megawatt hour over the year. And that's okay for the load, and then depending on the hourly price, one will actually compensate the other, depending if the price is higher or lower than the actual strike price. So then it doesn't really matter what the pool price is. I mean, you will be paying the price that you wish you signed for, and the beauty of financial contracts is that, I mean, you don't have the physical delivery risk and the transmission issues as with bilateral physical, which will come in a minute. So this other market is basically self-schedule, and you have all these wheeling deals now with Schedule 2, which are bilateral physical, which I don't like the word wheeling. And it's basically you are already in a kind of competitive market with some peculiarities, which will come back in a minute. But there is no real self-schedule of this. I mean, there's no rules currently. But I mean, usually what happens is that these bilateral physical contracts needs to be scheduled to the system operator. And in case of deviations between the meters and what you schedule during the day ahead, then you pay a penalty, or what we call an imbalances. But since things change from I mean, some generators really like to trade bilaterally, so they can trade from 1 hour to 20 years. But it's also it's not so simple if you want to trade short term to trade via day-ahead market. What's being called the market in South Africa for now is just one additional way of trading. So basically, a day-ahead market, I mean, instead of having Anglo-Americans or another customers to pay you for the bilateral contracts, when you trade in the day ahead, basically you're being paid by the power exchange, which takes this credit risk. So everybody has to put collaterals in a day ahead market, and it will settle on a daily basis. And then depending when is what we call the gate closure. Gate closure means you cannot trade anymore, then the system operator takes control. As market grows, I mean, the gate closure can be 15 minutes ahead of real time. But usually when market starts, the system operator wants to have a bit of vision about supply and demand in real time. So the gate closure could be a few hours before real time. So after the day ahead market close at noon, the the day before the real dispatch, then there is what can be called the intraday. The intraday could be organized by our power exchange, or it could be additional bilateral physical contracts between participants. So the important is you can trade till a certain hour, and after that hour, the system operator basically is taking control. And he's taking control by, so if he thinks that the market is going to be short, there's not enough bilateral contracts, then he's going to actually ask for bids from generators to go up or to go down. So sometimes the generators will actually sell power, and sometimes it's going to buy power from the system operator in real time. And this is the last market. That's the bilateral, that's the balancing market part. Tony mentioned the capacity market in the UK. I mean, in a few years ago, because renewables have zero variable cost and prices were very volatile, then most European countries were really scared that there was not going to be any new investment. So they start auctioning capacity separately from energy. So it's a nice business for a generator. You're actually being paid twice. I mean, the day-ahead market is supposed to be only variable energy cost, but since it's being paid the marginal price, actually some generators gets a lot of money. And in addition, now with separate capacity contracts, you're getting a part of that you're getting additional payment. I have supplementary slides which explain a bit the situation in Europe now that Tony alluded, because of high gas prices, but not only because of high gas prices, but half of the nuclear in France is out for maintenance and some corrosion problems. And actually there's less water in southern Norway. So there's a perfect storm of issues now which makes the wholesale price in Europe totally unsustainable currently. So, I mean, this is not a perfect slide. I mean, there's a lot of arrows which needs to be defined. And this is where market design is important. When you want to start a market, is basically, you might have a competitive part and you might have a regulated part, but then you need to decide some key questions. I mean, who is actually scheduling, who's actually paying for imbalances, who's providing other ancillary services. So there are all series of questions to kind of link the two markets, which will be separate, but there's some links in the middle which needs to be confirmed, assuming that there will be a gradual path to residential customers market opening. And a few things. I mean, I could spend hours on congestion. I mean, I hear a lot in South Africa. Well, the Northwest region is congested. I mean, all the solar and wind is there. Eventually, there will be a need for what we call congestion management methods for long-term and short-term congestions. So that will be part on the future market design. So basically, the system operator will need to do something to remove congestion short-term. And if they are long-term congestions, then also, I mean, the system operator might not need to sell some long-term transmission capacity. But one key issue will be, what do you do with all the existing PPAs, those that have been tendered by the IPP office, and a lot of them in the Northwest region? I mean, are these outside the market and they will be must run, or they will be redesigned, not the prices, but they will be subject to market rules, not necessarily have only their PPA technical characteristics. So because, I mean, that's going to be an important market design decisions, and it will be linked to how you handle congestions over time. I don't want to deal too much with this, but there is a slide in the supplemental ones looking at zonal prices in Norway. And currently in Norway right now, in the northern part of Norway, the price is $2 per megawatt hour, while the price in southern Norway is 160. So meaning if you're a generator in the north, you're not getting much money, but if you're a generator in the south, it's the opposite. And for the load, it's the opposite as well. So, I mean, you could envision a situation, a hypothetical situation in South Africa, and it's one scenario where the price in the Northwest region could be very low and the price in other regions could be very high. I mean, that's hypothetical, but I mean, it's one scenario. So congestion management is one of the 4 pillars of market design. Day-ahead market is very important. It gives very good signals, and that's how you can actually develop contract for difference linked to a day-ahead market. But the first price, the price which actually drives the all sequences, is actually the imbalance price, the real-time price, and that price cannot be hedged. But then that price is also very volatile because it can be very high or it can be very low. And that's the price that gives the signals for all the other markets. Ancillary services, I mean, they can be contracted separately by the system operator with generators and load, and what we call secondary reserve can actually be part of the balancing market. But ancillary services with the rise of renewables are also getting more and more important. Tony didn't mention it, but I mean, in the UK now, inertia is becoming an issue, and the system operator had to contract for more than 600 million pounds of inertia in the last year. And our last slides on the theory. I mean, because it's complicated. We're talking about prosumers. We're talking about all these future changes. But what is the role of NERSA in all of this? I mean, what is regulated and what is not in a competitive market? And again, this is kind of the theory. There can be variations here and there, so the theory says generation and trading, retail, supply. I mean, the word trading, retail, supply means different things, but is used differently in different countries. So I'm putting trading, retail, supply. So usually it is competitive, but I mean, is it competitive from the start, or do you split the market, as I mentioned, with a regulated and a non-regulated? And do you have a big bang approach or not? And I'll come back to what is being proposed in South Africa in a minute. But what happened in Europe in the early 2000s, except in the UK, where there was a big bang approach, is that basically countries developed a series of initial vesting contracts or initial bilateral physical contracts between generators, mostly the older one, and the regulated distribution companies for sale to the regulated market. Those who are not eligible. And these contracts were 100% regulated in the first year, and then with declining volume over 5 years to allow for the distribution companies and these older generation companies to adapt to the competition. And so the message here is that some of the distribution load and some of the generation is likely to be regulated one way or another for X number of years from the day the market start. And that's another problem. The market has already started in South Africa, but without rules. So new IPPs then can sell to eligible customers. Problem right now is that there's no market rules that actually kind of guide how these IPPs can actually sell to eligible customers. Use of transmission charge, in Australia, the transmission is partly competitive. I mean, there's arbitrage between the provinces, and there's other countries where there is kind of competitive transmission, but usually transmission is considered a natural monopoly, thus needs to be regulated. So NERSA will in the future regulate Eskom transmission separately. And then the future ISMO will have transmission, but then we'll have potentially various other charges that will be included in the use of transmission charge, like a separate ancillary service charge, potential stranded cost charge, potential separate capacity charge, and that's going to be a big debate in coming year. I mean, what is old capacity, what is future capacity, and the methodologies will define the ratio being paid by generators and the load, and is it going to be megawatt charge or megawatt hour charge or a mix of this? I mean, the design of transmission tariff, including congestion management, is crucial in the market design. So NERSA and the MRE will have to work together to design this whole system, or with the future ISMO.
Stephane, some 4 minutes left, 3-4 minutes left.
Okay, use of distribution charge is actually regulated, and retail to regulated customers. I mean, we mentioned the potential unbundling of these charges in the future. Rapidly, in Europe, all European Union members de facto needs to follow the European directives, and de facto now there is a sales schedule dispatch model with every country needing to belong to a day-ahead market, either their own or there's a regional day-ahead market. Energy community means a lot of countries outside the European Union which have kind of formed their own kind of regional market linked to the European one. So countries poorer than South Africa, Albania, Bosnia, Macedonia, Serbia, Moldova, Georgia, Turkey being the biggest one, they also follow the self-schedule market. Then we're moving to other parts of the world. Central America, Latin America, mostly centralized dispatch with zonal or nodal pricing with contracts for difference, but in some markets, bilateral physical are also allowed. But the problem when you have zonal pricing or nodal pricing is that it's very difficult to hedge between thousands of nodes or various zones. That's for another workshop. In India, self-dispatch, Malaysia, central dispatch, Vietnam, central dispatch. So you see in Asia, there's more variations on the models. In the USA, I mentioned the famous PGM, New York ISO, New England ISO. Because of nodal pricing, it's a mix of centralized dispatch with some bilaterals in theory, which are being allowed. And in Canada, we only have 2 states which actually have competitive market, is Ontario and Alberta. So that's the rapid. So I'm going to spin.
Can I suggest that we perhaps hop to the impact on municipalities for last two?
Just that one. So Eskom, I mean, so while there's load shedding, I mean, there's this workshop and Eskom and other stakeholders are really preparing for what I call a paradigm shift in the organization of the sector. I mean, there's a lot of work being done behind the scene. Eskom is well advanced and it's on bundling, but there's still no actual date when the ISMO will be actually operational. Is it going to be next year or is it going to be in 5 years? So still a question mark, and that's a very important mark because you need that milestones, you need that timeline to be able to prepare that ahead of time. So now it's still a bit up in the air. And what's going to be needed is all these prerequisites and discussions and agreement on all the questions I mentioned and the various new tariff methodology. NERSA will have to have various different new tariff methodologies. And the market train has already left the station. From 400-500 megawatt of wheeling, now you have more than 70 deals being financed and or still in final stage of negotiation for over 5,000 megawatt. And as you know, there's no more 100 megawatt limit. But one key aspect besides that there's no real rules is also that, I mean, Eskom is still subsidizing peak prices. So all industrial customers now who are signing Schedule 2 deals are paying less than 10 US cents, while the actual peak price with diesel is over 35 US cents. So Eskom is actually subsidizing now a lot of industrial customers, and de facto, if municipalities contract directly, they will have to really consider that this could change in the future. So that's a slide that you might have seen. And I put another one, which is kind of a simplifying the Eskom proposal, where the transmission system operator will have 4 distinct functions. And there was a question in the chat box about the role of the CPA. I mean, basically the CPA will actually buy the old PPAs from the current IPPs. I mean, those who were successful in the tendering round. at the current price of this PPA, and they will resell those into the day-ahead market. And remember, I mentioned the regulated initial contracts. But the creativity of the proposal of Eskom is that they will have financial edge in place for some times between Eskom generation and the CPA, and between the CPA and Eskom distribution, if Eskom distribution accept this. So basically, the wholesale price at the beginning of the market opening will be edged for some times with declining volume. And the CPA might offer some financial edge to other participants, but that has not been really defined yet.
Stephane, 1 minute.
Yeah, last slide. So impact on municipalities. Basically, and this is food for thought. I mean, you all know that there's a framework in place where municipalities are allowed to buy directly if they're in good financial standings. So what do you do with municipalities who are not in good financial standings? So I put 2 columns. So basically, municipalities allowing to buy directly. I mean, there will be a need to change the legal regulatory framework to give them more flexibility to be able to buy short-term from a day-ahead or from an intraday market. These municipalities will need to schedule their trade eventually with the ISMO, and they will have to pay for deviation if their meters actually deviates from the scheduling. They will need to post collaterals to the market operator, both for imbalanced settlement as well as participation in the day-ahead market. And then NERSA will need to potentially approve the generation pass-through cost to the regulated customers. A bit more controversial. Now there is basically negotiated third-party access. When we talk about open access, we talk about a model use of distribution agreement for wheeling. Everybody signs the same agreements. It's not negotiated case by case. And then at the same time, then you're signing on to a kind of general cost of service methodology for distribution network and regulated retail charge. And what do you do with municipalities buying from potentially the CPA? So instead of getting their power from Eskom, they might get the power from the CPA at regulated price. There's probably going to be no need for scheduling in the short term. The CPA will sell 24/7, but then you need to develop the rules how this is going to work over time. And then maybe you need to develop some milestones and transition methodology to kind of get these municipalities to graduate to the market. So I put some potential targets, potential ideas here, how this could work over time. So to allow these municipalities to graduate to be able to do like the other ones and buy from the market. So I'll stop here, and there are supplemental side as well. So thank you very much.
Stephane, thank you very much. We would like to take you up again in the panel discussions.